Recording in progress.
Yeah. So a warm welcome once again to all India Smart Protein Innovation Challenge participants and teams to the sixth webinar of ISPIT 2021 inspirational webinar series, which is focused on post-harvest processes and end product characterization for cultivated meat. I'm Akshay Bhatt, the Cultivated Meat Science and Technology Specialist with GFI India, and we'll be hosting this exciting session with Dr. Girish Patil. We also have Nicole Roque as well as Shardul Dabir, who are innovation specialists at GFI India today with us. So basically, before we delve into our session, you as a participant can use the Q&A button to ask your questions. Please also feel free to use the chat to highlight any content which you think is important and relevant to this specific session. And please not use it for any kind of internal discussions as well. After the webinar, we'll also have a Q&A session where all questions will be answered and participants will be able to, or they'll be given the option to raise their hand by, please click the raise your hand button and you can ask a question live to the speaker and to the session panelists, basically. So moving on, Dr. Girish Patil, a warm welcome to you. Dr. Girish Patil is a principal scientist at ICAR, National Research Center on Meat, NRC Meat. He has completed his PhD in livestock products technology from Indian Veterinary Research Institute. His main area of interest focuses on animal and veterinary sciences. His area of expertise includes meat science, meat traceability, and meat species identification. So he has more than 38 publications in various journals as a direct author as well as co-author. Dr. Patil is championing the importance of cultivated meat to his peers and students at NRC Meat and ICAR in India, encouraging them to adapt and embrace and support new projects in this emerging technology area. So I think it's needless to say that he has been very instrumental in driving a specific project, for example, that is the cultivated meat mutton meat project awarded by DBT in collaboration with Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, Hyderabad, since 2019, and is currently designing several research projects in the area of cultivated meats, on the cultivated meat space. So quickly moving forward, obviously the Smart Protein Innovation Challenge would not have been possible without the support of our sponsors. Our title sponsor, Capri Global, our key sponsors, NICE and Alchem Foundation, organizing partner CII-Co, supporting partners BIRAC, Nifton, CCAMP, AIC, CCMB, IIT Madras Bioincubator, SIGN, and ABLE, and our ecosystem enabling partners Blue Horizon, DSG, Fixie, Brink, Anku Capital, Axilla Labs, ProVeg, Omnivore, Agnia, Hansa Ventures, Big Idea Ventures, and Hardy. So again, a big congratulations to all of you who have qualified to phase 2 of the challenge, and all the best for the phase 3, which will be where we'll be detailing out and an in-depth proposal on a solution across track 1 and track 2, and also to phase 4, where you'll have the opportunity to present your solution or your startup idea to a panel of investors and be among the top winners who are eligible for a combined prize pool of 20 lakh rupees INR. So I think everybody knows about the problem statements which we have supplied across track 1, across 1 to 5. So today we'll be focusing on specifically RFP5, that is post-harvest processes, as well as end product characterization for cultivated meat. So the Indian smart protein ecosystem is definitely nascent for cultivated meat vertical. And so since we have 4 segments under cultivated meat: cell line development, culture media optimization, edible scaffolds, as well as bioprocess engineering and novel bioreactor designs. All these areas give multiple opportunities for researchers as well as entrepreneurs to ideate and come up with new solutions to potential bottlenecks across the supply chain of these 4, across the 4 supply chain areas of cultivated meat. And obviously, post-harvest processes as well as end product, for example, meat characterization is very critical, and it basically transcends across all these 4 value chain areas. And I think the insights as well as the learnings which the participants today will get will be very, very relevant to teams as well as participants in both track 1 as well as track 2. So without further ado, I will now open the floor to Dr. Patil for his presentation on today's topic.
Thank you, Akshay. Kindly enable sharing.
Yes, Dr. Patil, please go ahead and share your slides.
Okay. Okay, is it visible?
Yes, it is. Dr. Patil, you're not very visible. Could you please shift the camera a little? Yes, now it looks good. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good evening, all. Thank you, Akshay and GFI, for giving this opportunity to interact with the youngsters, who are interested in ideating and contributing for this very prospective sector. I think this is the future of the food science. There is the alternate meat sector and alternate milk, alternate egg. All these things are coming. So in this, all of you are wish to contribute. And today I will be focusing on meat actually, post-harvest process and end part characterization for cultivated meat. I work for National Research Center on Meat. Our institute is the only institute in the country which works exclusively on meat and meat products. Okay, so this is under Indian Council of Agriculture Research, so Ministry of Agriculture. So to give an overview of the meat sector, in India, around 71% of Indian population is non-vegetarian. Okay, this is as per the Registrar General of Government of India. As per their survey, around 70% of Indian population is non-vegetarian. That means approximately 1 billion. So it's a very huge market. I think second only to China. So meat contributes immensely for the animal protein consumption, and it contributes around 2,80,000 crores to the national GDP. So meat production is going around 7% per annum, and in the last 10 years, our meat production has doubled. So apart from the domestic consumption, India is also a huge exporter of buffalo meat. India is the highest buffalo meat exporter in the world. Around 1.15 million ton of buffalo meat worth around $3,175 million was exported in 1920. So India stands fifth in the world meat production. So if you see the composition of the meat, overall meat, chicken contributes half of the total meat produced in India, followed by around 20% by buffalo, some 14% by goat, and 8% by sheep, and 5% by pig and cattle. So if you on the left side, if you see state-wise meat consumption, the states which are pink in color.
Dr. Patil?
Yes.
We are not able to see your slides.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay, is it visible now without screen share? Yeah.
So if you could just, is your slide deck on a PowerPoint presentation or is it on Google Slides?
No, it's in PPT only.
So if you can just press the share screen button below.
Okay, no, I did that one only.
Okay. Could you please try that again?
Okay, I will redo it. Okay, where is my... It is not showing.
Would you like me to share it to you?
Is it visible
No,
now?
we can see it. Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, now we can see it.
Is it visible now? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Sorry for this. So half of the meat is poultry, followed by buffalo meat. In the map, what you see, the states in pink color, they are the majorly meat-consuming states. The states what you see in the green color, they are the majority of the people are vegetarians. The highest meat consumption rate is found in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, and more than 98% of the population. Slide shifting. Yeah. So projected demand by 2050 with the increasing so that the population of India, it is expected to be around 1.6 billion by 2050, and it will only stabilize by 2060. So with increasing population, okay. So now with increasing population and with increasing per capita income globally, it has been seen that the demand for the meat and meat products rise. So you can see the graph. If you see other countries, wherever the per capita income is high, the production and consumption of meat is also high. So keeping that in mind, as the Indian population is growing, and which will be around 1.6 billion by 2050, and also per capita income is also rapidly rising. So under these scenarios, demand for the meat and meat products will rise, and it is expected that by 2050, demand for the meat and meat products will be around 34 kg, per person per capita meat consumption. As of now, the per capita consumption is only 5.5 kg. Okay, so now it is expected to be by 34 kg by 2050. Even the conservative estimate by FAO, it also projects by 18 million tons, production by 2050. So if you see the input side, Akshay, are the slides shifting?
Yes, Dr. Patil, it is.
Okay. Now that is regarding the demand side. If you see the input, the one of the major inputs required for the meat animal, for rearing the animals, for growing the fodder is water. As per the Niti Aayog report 2018, so 21 major cities are racing towards the zero ground level now this year and last year we had some some unexpected huge rainfall. That is why groundwater level has increased in most of the places. But however, by seeing the overall trend, by 2030, our overall demand will be 2 times the availability. Okay, so we have all seen the effect of the climate change. Sometimes in Chennai, we were to in 2018, we were to bring the water by train, but this year they are in the flood. All these problems are happening. So, but overall, the availability of the water will reduce in the times to come. Regarding the feed availability for rearing of the meat animals, as per the report of Parliamentary Standing Committee on Agriculture, there is overall around 26% deficit of greens, around 34% deficit of concentrates, and around 21% deficit of dry fodder. So without going by numbers, we can very easily say that we are facing a deficit around 20 to 30% in availability of the feed and fodder. So as per the Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying advisory to the states, which was given in 2019, while the number of livestock is growing rapidly, the grazing lands are gradually diminishing due to pressure on the land for agricultural and non-agricultural uses. Most of the grazing lands have either been degraded or encroached upon, restricting the availability for grazing. Now the area for the fodder cultivation is limited to about 4% in the last 4 decades, and I think there is no chance of increasing in time to come because of increasing urbanization and several other factors, industrialization and other things. So this is the fodder availability. So there is an institute called Institute for Gross Fodder, Indian Institute for Gross Fodder. It is located in Jhansi. It's an ICAR institution. So they have given the different states wherein availability and deficit and all. So the states which you see in red in color, they are facing more than 50% deficit. So the states which are in pink in color, there is a deficit of 25 to 50%. So only the states, for the states which are green in color, only 4 to 5 states are having the surplus fodder availability. So this is situation. So under all these circumstances, wherein our inputs, the main water and fodder are coming down, grazing land is coming down, population is rising, demand for the meat is rising, and plus, so all these things have given to a situation wherein we need to find alternatives to meat and alternatives to livestock production. So this has created a huge business opportunity, in terms of so several business houses are they're seeing a prospective business in this. So there is an increased interest in plant-based meats and cultured meat. So these are the two options. If you want to go for alternative meats, what are the options? We have to go either for the plant-based or cultured meat. So now let us see just a brief into both of these, and then we'll go regarding the meat. So now plant-based meat products are made to mimic the properties found within the natural meats by using the plant-based ingredients. So what are the plant-based ingredients? Basically soya, vegetable oil, potatoes, brown rice. So all these things, it is mixed in a proper proportion, and the color is given by adding the beet juice and plant-derived heme, and then certain kind of plant-based products are made, which will taste similar to meat. That is the basic. So beyond burger, beyond sausages, and then several other companies in the Europe and US, they are making a huge business out of it. And there is increasing demand and increasing interest in the plant-based meats in India also. Okay. So regarding the cultured meat, as you're already aware, it is basically we are providing the environment similar to that of the body of the animal, that may be using a bioreactor. In the fermenter or bioreactor, we provide required oxygen, required temperature, required media, nutrients, and everything, and we allow the cells to multiply. So ultimately, it is a slaughter-free meat, VAT-grown meat or lab-grown meat. Several names are given for this. Now, these basically the biopsy cells are taken, and then they are first they are allowed to differentiate, and then they are multiplied in bioreactors. So in the bioreactor, we have to provide certain support because these cells are myoblasts are attachment dependent cells. So we have to grow it by providing the scaffolds, and scaffolds will also help in providing the shape. So using this, so cells can be multiplied, and all those cells can be purified, and we can use it for the production of the meat. So in the year 2013, Mark Post, first demonstrated that it is possible to produce. So he has showed the proof of concept, and people tested it. So that is how the whole thing started. After that, there was a rapid increase, in the investment in this area, and also there was interest across the world increased, including India and several countries. So finally, what is meat? All the food products, including meat in India, it's all regulated by Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, FSSAI. Okay. Now, as per FSSAI, meat means all the edible parts, including edible offal of any food animal, slaughtered in an abattoir that are intended for or have been judged as safe and suitable for human consumption. Okay. So as of now, as on today, the meat means only the edible parts of the food animals. That is called meat. Now, now we are using different terminologies like cultured meat and plant-based meats and all. I think they're all accepted also. But basically, meat means something which is derived from the animal. So how? What is the basic structure of the meat? If you see, so the overall, the meat, it is at the outer area. It is all bound together by connective tissue. So we have the perimysium. So perimysium, it covers the first it starts with the muscle fiber. So group of muscle fibers come together to form a fascicle, which is covered by endomysium. Then over the endomysium, we have the perimysium. Okay, and then epimysium. So these are the endomysium, perimysium, epimysium. So it's a group of connective tissues which bound together the muscle fibers. So this muscle is connected to the bone through tendon. So this is how the whole meat, the structure of the meat looks. To go in more detail, the first thing is we have the muscle fiber. Muscle fibers are multinucleated. Okay, so why they are multinucleated? Because myoblasts in the whatever the stem cells are there, they fuse, differentiate and then fuse. When they fuse, multiple myoblasts fuse and they form muscle fiber. That is why these cells are multinucleated. There are blood vessels passing through it, capillaries. Okay, and then each of the cells have the plasma membrane, sarcolemma, and inside the muscle fiber we have the sarcomere. Okay, in the sarcomere there is a arrangement of actin myofilament, myosin filament, M line, Z line, and all those things. So these are all the group of proteins. Apart from providing the proper support and texture, they also play a role in determining the composition of the meat. It also determines the what will happen after the slaughter of the meat. Rigor mortis, and all those things are controlled by this actomyosin filaments. So basically, whatever the muscle fibers we have, they have a group of proteins: actin, myosin, titin filaments, and other things. I'm not going into detail. And now, so this is how the structure of the meat is. So now what will happen after the slaughter of the animal? So muscle is not meat. There are two things we should understand. One is muscle, another is meat. So certain chemical reactions happen, certain changes happen. So that converts muscle into meat. So pre-rigor mortis. So initially before rigor mortis sets in, so all the vital functions stop in the animal. So there is no further supply of oxygen, because during the slaughter we are completely, animal is bled. So whatever around 50% of the blood present in the body, it is completely removed. Now once there is no blood and there is no the respiration stops, supply of the oxygen also stops. Residual oxygen into hemoglobin and myoglobin. Now the presence of the ATP. Now initially there will be presence of ATP. ATP is required for keeping it acts as a lubricant. It keeps the actin and myosin filaments separate. So that is how the proper it will be just like a muscle only. But once the rigor mortis sets in, all the ATP is exhausted. Presence of ATP. So magnesium ATP is exhausted. Anaerobic metabolism sets in, and there is a strong actomyosin, irreversible actomyosin bondage will be formed. So there is a irreversible a linking of actin and myosin filaments. So that leads to rigor mortis. So at this stage, at the stage of the rigor mortis, meat will be very tough. So after some time, the tenderization phase starts. Now toughness decreases. So whatever the toughness we see in the rigor mortis, it decreases. How it decreases? Because of the action of the calpains, cathepsins, and different proteases will be there. So these proteases lead to tenderization. That is why in India, commonly what we do is we consume hot meat, which is not prescribed. Even if you want to consume the hot meat, immediately after slaughter the chicken or animal, it should be consumed within 30 minutes to 1 hour. We should now, otherwise people usually what they do, they take the hot meat, they keep it in the fridge, and sometimes with when we do like that, the proper tenderness will not develop. Scientifically, after slaughter we have to keep the carcass in the chiller for 12 hours, 12 to 24 hours. What they do in the large slaughterhouses, after slaughter of the sheep and goat and cattle and buffalo, they hang the carcass at 4 degrees centigrade in the chiller for 12 hours. Okay, 12 to 24 hours. After chilling, during this chilling process, rigor mortis sets in, rigor mortis is over, tenderization starts, different chemical reactions happen, proteases act. Then next day, after 12 hours, the muscle becomes meat. Now the tenderness, whatever the flavor, all those things or all the changes are completed and it is ready for cutting and packaging. That is a standard practice. The hot meat is not a standard practice. Even if you want to consume the hot meat, it should be done within 1 hour. Within 1 hour, if you are completely cutting and then processing, it is okay. Otherwise, it should be properly chilled. We should allow the conversion of muscle to meat. We should allow the tenderization process. We should allow the aging, and then the meat should be consumed, for processing. Now, what are the challenges in achieving the alternative meats? We are thinking of plant-based meats and cultured meats. We have to achieve the composition and proper texture, color, and sensory acceptability. So when we say sensory, several factors are there. They should the color. We have to reach consistency, the marbling, tenderness, moisture, vitamins, fat, protein, minerals, texture, juiciness, flavor. All these things are important. The most important things are flavor and texture and juiciness, and the fat content, marbling. It all has to match with the natural meat. Then only people will consume. Ultimately, the first thing which determines the consumer to go or repurchase is its sensory quality. So we have to achieve those sensory qualities. Now let us see one by one. The first thing is color. The color of the meat is provided by the myoglobin. Okay, the myoglobin exists in different forms that determines the color of the meat. So normally, whatever the myoglobin, if it is a deoxymyoglobin, then it will be purple in color. The iron will be in ferrous state. Okay, but the most desired bloom color in the meat, okay, that is a pinkish color, that will get when myoglobin is in oxymyoglobin state. Oxygen combined with the myoglobin, it forms the oxymyoglobin. That is the most preferred way. Okay, so that is why we should not generally the fresh meat. We don't go for don't go for vacuum packaging. We have to go for aerobic packaging. Then oxygen will combine with the myoglobin. Okay, iron is in the ferrous state. So we have to maintain this oxymyoglobin. Then only we'll get the proper color, pinkish bloom. Okay, we call it as the bloom. Now, there are different oxidation things. If the myoglobin oxidizes, it forms methmyoglobin. Okay. Then if methmyoglobin is there, if the myoglobin is oxidized, it will lead to the brownish color. So generally, this brownish color develops in the cooked meat. Otherwise, also normally, if you are keeping for over a long period, it without oxygen, it will get oxidized and form methmyoglobin. In the cooked meat, invariably it becomes a methmyoglobin. That is why we see the brown color in the cooked meat. So we have to know all these forms of the myoglobin. So as you are aware, in the cultured meat, in the myoblast, whatever we multiply in the bioreactors, there will not be any myoglobin. So that is why what they do, even what Mark Post it is, they have added certain beetroot color or some synthetic color they are adding. Okay. So this one thing you should know. So that is why we need to achieve the proper color which matches that of the meat. And next thing is flavor. The flavor of the meat, it is basically the whatever the ATP present in the meat, it is adenosine triphosphate. It is converted to inosine monophosphate and then inosinic acid. And then it is converted to hypoxanthine. It is the flavor component in the meat. Okay? Hypoxanthine is the flavor component. But that is not the sole factor. That is one of the factor. But that is a major factor which gives the meat. So for the conditioning is optimum when hypoxanthine level reaches 1.5 to 2 micromole per gram. When this hypoxanthine level is 1.5 to 2 micromole per gram, the proper flavor is developed. To reach this level of hypoxanthine level, they go for conditioning or aging. So what is this conditioning or aging? We keep the meat at 4 degrees centigrade for a particular period of time, without allowing any microbial contamination under aseptic condition. We allow the things to change so that proper hypoxanthine level is developed in the meat. Okay. Now inosinic acid and alkaline and glucose, it all makes into basic meat flavor. Another important reaction is Maillard reaction, wherein proteins and glucose they react and they form the browning. That's called Maillard reaction. Maillard reaction is also responsible for the flavor of the meat. So these are the two important things, but they are not the only two. It's a whole combination. There is a whole science behind the flavor, but at least you should know that hypoxanthin and this Maillard reaction, they are very important components for the. And apart from this fat content, okay, they are also responsible. So what is the fat content? We call it as marbling. You know, marbling is the intramuscular deposition of fat. So I have seen two reactions. So one in the 2013, some journalist he tasted the cultured meat prepared with the mark post, and another consumer now, as you are aware, in the Singapore it has been permitted. One consumer reacted after consuming; they are feeling it dry. You know, it's a dry product. You know. Like that, you know. So why that drying is there? Because it is a fat. Fat is very, very important for developing the flavor. So one more thing is intramuscular fat deposition in the meat. Not only below the epimysium, you know, we find the deposition. So intramuscular deposition of fat is called marbling of meat. So marbling of meat is having very important role in creating the flavor of the meat, okay, and also texture, tenderness. So now, how to create this fat in the cultured meat? We have to go for co-culturing. So one thing is we are going for the myoblast. Then we have to combine it with the adipose cells. We have to extract adipose cells, and then it also depends on the fiber. You know, we require the fiber. For that, we have to go for the fibroblast. So we have to make a soup. We have to make co-culturing of myoblast, fibroblast, adipoblast, all of them combined when they multiply, so that there we can expect that we can culture, we can produce the meat which will match that of natural meat. So let us see the composition of meat. So nutritional composition also very, very important. So now, for example, the protein level in the chicken breast, it is around 24% protein will be there. Okay, in the beef around 20% protein, in the pork around 18%, and then the mutton it's around 20% protein will be there. In the fat level, around 8.5% in chicken, and then in the beef it's around 7%. And then in the pork, so different levels we are giving this presentation. You can see apart from the different vitamins, sodium, zinc, phosphorus, selenium, these are the important components. This is not the only one. This is the composition of the meat. Now there was a study wherein they have compared the nutritive quality of the plant-based burger and then meat burger. Okay, plant-based meat, you know what you call. So there they have this was published in 2019. So there it was mentioned that the plant-based burger protein level was 9.7, and in the meat burger it was 15.4. And in the energy, it was 736 calories in the plant-based, whereas it was 760 in the meat burger. And the fat level was also very high, you know, in the meat-based burger. Similarly, in the sausages also, so they have seen 13% protein and fat of 7.9%, whereas in the meat sausage it was 16% protein and 22% fat. So lower fat, I know that is also one of the attraction, you know, low-fat product. You know, that's also one of the attraction, because nowadays people want to go for lesser calorie, lower calorie and lower fat. So here the protein level similar, but lower fat and lower calorie. That is one of the preferred type of the product. In the plant-based means and the meat means, the lower calorie. Okay, so the plant-based means has lower protein and also lower fat also. So now in one publication they say, food sources in the natural state contain thousands of compounds that are capable of impacting the human health. The vast majority are not appearing in the consumer nutritional fact panels. So now you say energy, protein, fat. So they are not the sole, they say. If you want to say in the wholesome meat, when you see, if you want to provide all the nutrients, you know, so there are hundreds of thousands of compounds. So as and when you develop the product, and slowly, step by step, you can go on adding value so that we can take it near to the meat. So now it is not that just the question of the protein. Okay, so what is the quality of the protein? What is the biological availability? That is also important. That's why I just want to show amino acid profile is also important. So amino acid profile, lysine, leucine, isoleucine, cysteine, and all those things we should know what is the presence in the beef, lamb, and pork. Although the protein in the plant-based meat, the protein level may reach, but the bioavailability of those proteins may not be that of the animal proteins or meat proteins. That also we should keep it in mind, and we should ensure that how to improve that biological availability of that protein. That is also important, because people will question from all angles. Whenever research happens and something new we are trying to do, so people pose thousands of questions. First they will say, oh, what about protein, fat? Then they will say taste. When you reach all those things, they will say, what is the biological availability? Is it same as that? So that is why we should be aware of this, and we should be able to slowly move towards move in that direction. And similarly, fatty acid profile also. Polyunsaturated fatty acids and cholesterol in lean meat. Around 80 in the mutton contains around 80 milligram per 100 gram, beef around 60, and pork around 71 milligram per 100 gram. And here further, whatever the polyunsaturated fatty acids are there. Then mineral contents: potassium, copper, iron, phosphorus, zinc, and other things. Vitamin content. So why I am showing all these things is it is not just quantity of the protein, fat, and ash and moisture. It is not just that. You should also know further profiling of nutrients, and then whatever the product to develop, we should ensure that at least whatever possible, we should be able to reach, and we should be able to consume we should be able to convince the consumers. Now, once you have the meat, you have the meat, and then how to evaluate it. So for evaluating, the different parameters are there. Now one thing is pH. So one thing what we say is ultimate pH. When the animal is slaughtered, whatever the glycogen present in the meat, it degrades and it produces certain acid. So we say ultimate pH. So when we are keeping in the chiller, ultimately the pH of 5.5 will be reached in the meat. Okay. Then we say that that meat is of good quality. If the meat is having higher pH, that is not preferred. So it is encouraged. It is scientifically recommended to reach a pH of 5.5 in the ultimate pH of 5.5 in the meat. That must be kept in mind. Then water holding capacity. What is water holding capacity? Whatever the protein present in the meat, it is having certain water holding capacity. This water holding capacity is required for juiciness, creating the juiciness and texture of the meat. So that is the reason why the people who are consuming I don't know whether Akshay consumed certain cultured meat from the Singapore. I don't know, but whomsoever people consumed, they say that it is feeling a bit dry. Why? Because it has not reached the required water holding capacity. So there are different techniques, how to reach that water holding capacity. We can incorporate certain ingredients also. Then protein extractability. Whenever you go for the preparation of the emulsion, we have to extract the proteins. There are different kinds of proteins are there. Water soluble protein is there, salt soluble protein is there. That is why when we prepare sausages or nuggets and other things, when we are going for the preparation, emulsion and chopping, we add water and then we add salt. So that then we go for chopping, so that all the salt soluble proteins are extracted. That salt soluble protein make a covering over the fat, and that forms the emulsion. So that emulsion is used for preparation of the various kinds of products what you see. Whether you see the burger or you see sausages, so the protein extractability is important. Myofibrillar fragmentation index is important. Muscle fiber diameter is important, And then myoglobin content, as you are aware, color, color all depends on the myoglobin. What is the myoglobin content is important. So proximate analysis, it is the major components like water, protein, fat, ash, and all those things. Then amino acid profile, fatty acid profile, R value, and color. Color, for measuring the color, we have this Hunter Color Lab. We say there are three parameters, LAB. We say that is light, what is the level of the light, and what is the color of the red, what is the yellowishness. The three parameters are there. That is called Hunter Color Lab. So using that equipment, we will be able to measure the color. So whenever we are preparing the product, using that color, they are available at all rates. Even so using that color meters, we should match the color and see whether we have reached the required color values for the cultured meat or. And then texture profile analysis. There are food texture analyzers are available. So in that also the adhesion, chewability, several parameters, 6-7 parameters are there. Gumminess and other things. So those texture profile analysis also we should see, and we need to have a prepare the baseline for the meat, and then we have to try to achieve that level of texture profiling in the. So now basically the texture in the meat is provided by the whatever the connective tissue present in it, connective tissue, fat, other things are present in it. Now what is that parallel things which you are providing in the cultured meat or plant-based meat, that should be seen. Okay. And then recently one study was done, published in 2020 only. So what is the range of the pH? When the meat was initially meat at 0 day, it was pH was 6, and then it went on decreasing 5.87, 5.83, 5.81 after 6 days. Water holding capacity around 17%, R value of 1.17. So all these parameters are there. I'm just this why I'm showing is this is how those numbers look, you know. So this can we can take as a, although this is the spent-end meat, in the publication you will get different kinds of parameters which we need to match finally. Apart from that, histological structure of the muscle is also important. You know, muscle fiber and the bundle thickness. We have to see what is the muscle fiber thickness, muscle bundle thickness. Okay. Then after that, perimysium thickness, endomysium thickness, all these things. You know, this is all latest publication I have taken. So that we should do it. And then muscle fiber diameter. What is the fiber diameter in chicken? It's around 20 micrometers. In the goat, 22 micrometers, and stew 19, and sheep 25. You know, all these things, and whatever the muscle we are growing. This is a very simple analysis which can be done using the microscope. And now I am not going into detail, but I want to tell that this year only we have published a book, Analytical Techniques in Meat Science. Okay. So this was published. This is available online. You can purchase. So here all the techniques which are required for analyzing the meat and meat products, you know, quality evaluation and then safety evaluation, every things, all protocols are available here. We are exclusively focused on analytical techniques in meat science. You can go through that. So here it contains how to sample the meat, how to estimate the moisture, protein analysis, lipid analysis, mineral analysis, test for determining the functional properties of meat, analyzing the curing ingredients, test for determination of keeping quality, and then quick test for detecting the meat quality, physicochemical properties of oils and fats. All these things are there. So by taking that book, maybe you can use it for your own purposes. Okay. And then coming to last section, that is value addition to meat. Now finally, whatever the culture or whatever the plant-based meat you have, finally you have to make it presentable, make it ready to eat. You know, for that purpose, we have to go for the processing, which will aid to produce the valued variety, convenience meat products to meet ever-changing consumer needs. Okay, they are all aware. What are the basic processings? You go for emulsion-based products, restructured products, enrobed products, cured meat products, combination meat products, extended, vegetable extended products, spicy, smoked, fried, curried, semi-cooked. So various things are there. I'm not going into detail. But now depending on the, first we have to analyze what is the culture you got it, you know, what type of final outcome has come. So now, as of now, everybody is going for the minced products or emulsion-based products. Most of the people, obviously, we are going because we don't have the steaks at present, you know. Intact meat you are unable to produce. Whatever is there, we can go for it. And now, in order to reach that required flavor and all those things, we have to go for certain formulations. At NRC meat, we have a slaughterhouse and we also have a processing plant wherein we standardize and we have developed different kinds of products. So, so depending on the raw material, whatever you have, depending on the culture of the whatever you have, based on that, we can devise certain formulation and cooking methods for it. So I'm not going into details, you know, ground or emulsion-based product, that's the only thing. So these are some of the products, pork, which are sold by certain entrepreneurs, you know. So that's how it looks, you know, for the sausages, nuggets. So what I suggest is initially, instead of going for directly plant-based meats, we should go for hybrid products, combination of the natural meat and plant-based meat. We should go mix and then produce at different levels. So we can see up to what extent we can replace the meat with the this plant-based meat. So in this direction, if anybody wants to do research or if anybody wants to trial, NRC and meat will be happy to provide the facilities, and we can take certain joint projects also. And other processing steps, I don't want to go because you're all biotechnologists. I think these things we will come when you have the product with you, you know. And also retard processing wherein the product which can be kept at the room temperature. Then regulations pertaining to meat sector. This is very, very important. The first thing is for basic requirements for an avatar, we have a Bureau of Indian Standards. You know how to produce the meat is there. So that you have to see. This just out of interest, you can just go through. Although you are not following the process, by going to this document, you will come to know how the meat is produced, how the slaughterhouse, you know, it works. Everything will come to know. And then Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. Whether you make by cultured meat or you go by slaughtering, or you make the plant-based meat, you have to register yourself with the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, FSSAI. So there are different categories are there for petty food manufacturers and food business operators. You have to do the registration. So regulations pertaining to this are all available in the FSSAI this thing. So there you have to go, and there what kind of hygiene to be followed, what are the safety guidelines in terms of the microbiology, you know. No, for example, for the fresh meat, once you are producing the meat, you should not contain a total plate count more than 10⁻⁶ per gram. No, 6 log units. You should be less than 6. And all of our say regarding the safety parameters, all salmonella, you know, listeria, clostridium botulinum, campylum, all these things should be absent. So it is important that whatever you produce, it is free from the microbial and also chemical. So there are all there is a list of ingredients and chemical residues, because first question comes when you are going for the cultured meat, what kind of media component you are using, are they edible or inedible? So if it is inedible, if any toxicity is there, how did you remove it? All these questions will come. So that is why it is very important to put only edible kind of things, which and not to put any toxic chemicals in the media. And then you should also prove how much you have removed. And all those chemical residues which are present should be within the limit. I have not showed here. You can go to the website and see. And further, even for additives also, what kind of additives you will add to the meat. So that also you have to follow the FSSAI guidelines. And then animal welfare is also important. Even if you are taking the biopsy from certain animals, you have to follow the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act is there. And then for doing laboratory experiment, before taking the biopsy, you have to take the clearance from your institution animal ethics committee. It's not that just you go make a surgery and take it. You have to take the permissions, and then only you can go for a collection of the samples. Lots of conditions are put. We are also doing a project to the CCMB, and our Institute of Animal Ethics Committee, they have put lots of conditions, and we followed it. And some of them are very interesting type of thing. I will not go into those details. And then Pollution Control Board, this is also important, because whatever the products or whether cultured meat or plant-based you are doing, after the processing done, how do you dispose your media? It is not that simply you throw your media into the drains. So see, it is the same thing that applies to slaughterhouse also. The processing of all those effluents, that is also important, because whenever you are going for the culture, so that is also important aspect. Apart from some people will be working on the multiplication. So some people can see what are the after the media it is grown. What is the left out culture? How to dispose it. That is also a research challenge actually. That also simultaneously we should work, so that when we are there for producing the cultured meat, we also have the process for disposal of the waste also. Okay. So these are the things, and challenges are very high, and certain groups in different countries, they have achieved this cultured meat. So hopefully, so these things will become more simpler, and we will be able to go for higher upscaling of these cultures and all in time to come. But plant-based meats internationally, they have already they're already available in the shelf, but not just in India. It is very limited. So with time to come, they have thrown up very huge business opportunities, employment opportunities. So this is just how you pursue it. I suggest all of you to first gain thorough knowledge of everything and then attempt to go for developing anything in this direction. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Patil, for giving those insights into how meat is actually processed and what are some of the bottlenecks and some of the processes in terms of qualitatively analyzing meat products. Um, so we have a few questions with us. Uh, some questions have been asked previously and some questions have been asked live. The first question is, uh, please, if you could elaborate about marbling. Uh, can we produce exact proportion of major fatty acids in beef and incorporated to plant-based products to mimic flavor characteristics? I think what the person is asking is if you can actually produce those fatty acids in the same quantity proportion uh, through cultivated meat cell culture probably, and how can we take that and put into plant-based hybrid products, or the vice versa?
No, that's what, as I told, we have to go for the co-culturing with the adipocytes. At once, in one direction or one side, we are trying to multiply the myoblast. Simultaneously, we have to go for culturing of the adipoblast and producing that fat, animal fat. That is the only way. Otherwise, instead of using the animal fat, and regarding the marbling, it is an intramuscular fat which is present between the epimysium, epimysium of muscle. So that is a challenge, how to reach that fat level is a challenge. And if you want to incorporate in the plant-based meats, a fat something similar to meat, I don't know, frankly, whether it is anything is available such like that. Frankly, I don't think any fat can replace the meat fat. We have to try the combination of different plant fats, maybe peanut curd, all those things are available. So all those things, peanut butter, something like that, we can incorporate and try.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Patil. And also for the person who has asked this question, I think if you're talking about plant-based fats, then probably getting the fatty acid profile out of, for example, the target organism which you want to work on to produce cultivated meat would be a good idea. For example, find out the fatty acid profile of, let's say, chicken, if you're working on chicken meat, and then try to replicate that fatty acid profile using plant-based fats, probably apply wet extrusion. There are a lot of research groups working on wet extrusion to actually produce these kind of marbled meats. So probably if you can just Google out wet extrusion and marbled plant-based meats, you might find a bunch of publications in that area. And one of our GFI grantees, Dr. Anmi Rawat, has also been working on creating marbled steak. We have Dr. Amy's talk, which is recorded in some of our GFI sessions, which you can find on YouTube. Please go and refer to those sessions. So there is one more question from Yash Wazir. What are some of the open source databases where the property structure of plant-based proteins can be viewed? So probably Dr. Patil, you would not be the best person to answer this if I'm not wrong. But if you would not like to take this question, we can probably skip this and probably Shadul can talk to this if you would like to, Shadul.
So what was the question? Yeah.
The question is, what are some of the open source databases where the properties structure of plant-based proteins can be viewed?
I don't know. Sorry. Yeah.
So that's a good question, Yash. I think in general, it's a little difficult to find some of these databases for the precise reason that we keep repeating, right? For the past 60, 70 years, not many crops have been focused on extensively about, their protein properties in the context of its application in plant-based meats. But you should start with the webinar that we had shared earlier from Dr. Ganesh Bagler at IIIT, who works on some of these areas, and perhaps see if there's any relevant secondary literature available, perhaps on using AI or ML on understanding some of these plant proteins. I know that certain PhD scholars are working on it currently. And initially, companies like Aegis, etc., also explored the idea of finding, the most relevant plant structures for arriving at a plant-based kind of replication through some of these applications. But yeah, it's a good question. If I find something, I'll share in the Smart Protein social corner of our group.
Yeah, thank you for that, Shardul. So the next question is from Swapnil Kamble. When we cultivate meat or when we produce cultivated meat, till how many passages, and basically how many passages of primary cell lines could we go for before stopping for further use? Dr. Patil, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, actually, normally the cells after 20 to 25, it will stop. Actually, it will not multiply. After 20 to 25 doubling, it will stop. So that is a challenge. We have to increase this. There are certain strategies are made so that to immortalize, they say immortalize or develop the cells which will go up to 70 to 80 doublings. So for that, they go for certain TART gene injection and certain several different strategies are followed. But normally, it goes up to 20 to 25. It can be extended to 70 to 80 by following certain strategies. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Patil. Just to add to what Dr. Patil mentioned here, I think it's one thing is to think about how many passages you would like to take your cells through. The second thing is also conservation of the quality of your cells. Basically, it's what's the genetic consistency of your cell line over a period of time, and probably can innovate on that space as well, right? So, for example, if you start with a starter culture, obviously you start with probably a million cells or something, but when you take it to scale, how can you scale it much more than what you actually scale at a bench scale level? Probably can think about that in terms of bioreactors and also achieving that cell-cell contact and also giving that the right amount of cells in the right amount of concentration in the right, let's say, systems where you can actually culture cells, taking it to, let's say, a doubling or tripling under the same culture conditions is something which you can also think about. But generally, I think what Dr. Patil mentioned, 20 to 30 passages is basically what people are looking at this point in time. Do we have more questions? What all parameters of scaffold should be considered for cultivating on large scale, as scaffold pore sizes is a limiting factor? Thank you for the question, Swapnil. We will be taking this during one of our upcoming webinars on scaffolding. Please stay tuned for that. But Dr. Patil, would you like to throw some light there?
That is the whole challenge actually. So once you have scaffold, you're done actually. See, everything is there. The thing is, there are two types of scaffolds. One is some synthetic and another is edible. If you're using synthetic, then you have to separate it from the scaffolds and then you have to send it for. And then if you are using the edible scaffolds, several people are trying edible scaffold, then we can consume it. So that is one of the challenges. There are two challenges basically. Three challenges. One is cells should continue to multiply. That is the first challenge. Because if it stops, we will not be able to go for upscaling. Second is getting a proper scaffold, which is economical, which is edible, which will support the cell multiplication. And third challenge is replacing the serum, fetal bovine serum. These are the three challenges which people are still working on it. Yeah. However, some commercially available scaffolds are available for cell culturing. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Patil. Yeah, the next question: volatile compounds are widely contribute to flavor of meat. Usually, animal meat undergo browning of fatty acids to produce volatile compounds. Can't we produce these volatiles to impart meaty flavor to plant-based meat? I think the short answer is yes, but Dr. Patil.
Yeah, it is everything is possible, everything is possible and open as of now. For example, there is a process of smoking of meat. Earlier, what people used to do is they used to produce the hardwood smoke and then put it and then smoked meat they used to produce. Now what they're doing is that all the smoke they capture, all the volatiles of the smoke they capture, and then they produce the liquid smoke. So the liquid smoke is used for the product preparation. So similarly, someone can work on these volatiles. Basically, these volatiles are produced by the fatty acids. Those volatiles can be captured and then it can be added. But as of now, such things are not available. But people can definitely work in that direction.
And also some of the flavor components are actually produced, for example, ribose and ribose phosphate, if I'm not wrong, Dr. Patil. I think it's an
Yes.
off product of IMP, right? So probably adding such flavoring agents externally be a good idea probably while you're culturing cells, or somehow feeding that into your cell culture media. For example, even iron molecules, right? To increase
Yes.
the production of hemoglobin. Yeah, but thank you for that question. Can you please share what parameters of food safety need to be done for cultivated meat? Is the next question.
Any food safety issues are physical, chemical, and microbiological. Okay, these are the three areas. In the physical, whenever you are culturing or producing something, you should ensure that there are no physical contaminants. Okay, and then next is chemical. In the chemical, any chemical residues, pesticides, antibiotic, what you use in the culture, all that you should be free from the chemical. And the third one is the microbiological. So microbiologically, we should ensure that there are two things. One is process hygiene criteria, another is safety criteria. For the hygiene criteria, it is the total plate count. And yeast and mold, staphylococcus, they are important. E. coli and staphylococcus. When you go to the safety aspect, it is I showed you the 5 pathogens, they are important: Salmonella, Clostridia. So that is the microbiologically. When you come to the chemical safety, we should ensure that whatever the additives we're adding, they're all food grade, okay, and they all match the FSSA list. Food safety standards. Any countries' food standards have the list of ingredients which can be used in the food. If you are using something which are not listed there, then you have to go for the risk assessment, and then you have to prove that they are fit for consumption. I know that takes long time. That is why such kinds of research also should simultaneously go on. Some of the what will be the risk factors by certain media components if they are left out. What will happen if some DMEM is left out in the culture? Is it harmful? All the such things also research also should simultaneously go on.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Patil. I think we have one more question, probably not relevant to you, but again, if you want to answer this question, please do. What about protein hydrolysates as a protein source in cell culture?
Everything, all hydrolysates, you have something else. We have to try every source, because still we're in the process of developing and the science is still evolving. If you feel that protein hydrolysates have an option, you go ahead and it can be done. You can use it. And finally, as you know, the culture is very, very sensitive. Any contamination, any minor changes, cells will die. So if you're able to achieve, well and good, you can try.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Patil. I had one question for you, which I was curious about. For example, aging is a very critical process, like you said, right? So in terms of aging and how it is actually directly correlated towards texture, taste, mouthfeel, how it cooks, basically. So, I mean, moving forward, let's assume that we have companies, I mean, obviously across the world and in India, who have moved to a level where they're actually producing cultivated meat. So would aging still be a critical process? And how much should, let's say, for example, if there is a cultivated meat company in India who'd like to look into this aspect, probably because I think it's very critical. But what's your take on that? Is this something which needs to be kept in mind as in when you start working towards your product?
Actually, it all depends on what is the composition of the final product. As of now, composition of the plant-based meats I'm finding, but cultured meat composition I'm not finding anywhere. I don't know if you have any publication. Kindly let me know. In the cultured meat, as and when you go, first you have to see what is the glycogen level, protein level, what is the fiber, what is the fat. So based on that, we have to devise the methodology.
Thank you, Dr. Patil. There's one more question from some of our participants, which have been asked previously. Many compounds that accumulate in muscle are not produced in the muscle, but it's actually derived from animal feed components, which have been digested and modified by non-muscle organs. Do you think supplying some of these components externally will make or will not make a big difference? So they were saying, for example, some bioactive substances like taurine or phosphorus or zinc.
That is what actually no. In the when we come to the quality of the meat and its taste and other things. So one thing is composition, and another thing is how the animal is reared, what kind of feed is given, what is the age of the animal, what is the condition of the animal during slaughter. Several factors, several thousands and millions of chemicals and all, they play a role. Some of them we know, some of them we don't know. So that is the challenge actually. That's what we have to study, and we can add something, and we have to go on trying. That is the thing. Definitely, feed components play important role in taste. Yes.
And obviously, I think also when people who want to start or entrepreneurs who want to start their cultivated meat companies, I think focusing on which specific breed they want to take a biopsy from, for example, they establish their cell culture, what's the age of that animal. I think these are all very critical factors, right, to keep in mind before venturing out to start something.
Obviously, we have to take from the young animals. Because the myoblast, we'll find more number. If we are going for the lambs, we should take the pre-weaned lambs before weaning, less than 3 months. And then if you are going for a chicken, you have to go for egg embryo directly, 10 to 15 days. So if you are going for the large animals, even umbilical or from the embryo, like that they take. Younger is better for getting the cells. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Patil. So I think we have covered almost all the questions, but let's just open the floor for participants to ask any questions live. So if any of our attendees want to ask a question live, please raise your hand and we'll unmute you to ask a question directly to Dr. Patil. In the meanwhile, I would like to thank Dr. Patil for taking his time out and participating in this inspirational webinar series and giving a lot of critical insights as to how a meat is processed and how an end product is actually made once you cull the animal.
Thank you so much, and we appreciate the efforts of the Good Food Institute. I'm finding, since the first protein, Future of Protein Summit, what you did in IACT and CCMB, since that time onwards, I'm associated. And I have participated, and continuously, whatever what may come, you are pursuing this issue. So once with that zeal, if you if you proceed, definitely you will reach your level wherein we'll be able to have the commercial product. No, I'm happy to be part of this. And if you have some plant-based meats, we want to analyze them. If you give some links, some contacts from where we can get. So we want to just see and compare at our institute. So if we can arrange some samples for the plant-based meats, we'll be happy.
Thank you, Dr. Patil. Grateful to have you as a collaborator as well. I think people like you who are ecosystem enablers across various sectors which are relevant to cultivated meat or the smart protein sector are extremely critical to build this from ground up. And also the attendees today, I think they definitely are interested and are very driven towards building something of their own or contributing to this field in whatever way they can. And definitely we will get you in touch with some of these plant-based companies. But once again, thank you, Dr. Patil. I think we don't have any more questions for today. But just know that just so that the attendees know that Dr. Patil will be a mentor throughout the Smart Protein Innovation Challenge. So there are any startups any startups or any new ventures which qualify to phase 3 and phase 4, we will definitely let you know that Dr. Patil is in for mentorship based on his time commitments and based on your the kind of cross compatibility you will have based on an idea and based on Dr. Patil's expertise. But thank you very much, Dr. Patil, and Have a good evening, and have a good evening, all attendees, and stay tuned for more webinars coming up.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.